Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, where we dissect the trends and strategies that are surprising and delighting the marketing industry. I'm Jenny Mai Nguyen, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter.
Today, we are kicking off the first episode of 2026 with something that was a buzzword last year, and it'll be a buzzword this year, and you've definitely never heard us talk about it before. AI. Let's dig in. You guys, I actually can't believe that we are talking about AI yet again, but of course we are, because how could we not?
Yeah, and it's also CES is this week, and everyone's in Vegas, and what else is on everybody's lips but robots, automation.
It's Viva las AI.
Wow. I think Katie should write some slogans for the AI industry in general here. You mentioned CES. Christina Monlos, one of our senior reporters, is on the ground at CES this week, and she's sending us daily dispatches, one of which she filed literally this morning, I think, and has already been talking about all of the AI discourse that is happening on the ground there. And AI chatter is not new for CES, right? It happened last year. I would venture it happened maybe the year before. Katie, I think you said it was a big thing at Cannes even a couple years ago.
2023 Cannes. It was the word of the whole festival. So it's a continuing trend.
Yeah. I feel like the big difference potentially this year, especially in the marketing industry, is moving from hopefully buzzword and this theory and excitement about AI to actual implementation and this pressure to actually be using it. What do you guys think? Is that kind of the vibe?
I really think that it's going from the experimentation and the theoretical to the actual, to the how do we actually make this work in our workflows. And I think with any technology, it's there's sort of the sexy promise, and then there's sort of the less sexy reality, still useful, but maybe not, in a sort of Jetson style robot type form that maybe was promised a few years ago.
I feel like they are touting the robots though at CES. Based on what Christina's reported, it seems like robots are a theme at CES.
I mean, they always are, but I feel like it's somehow it seems the people at CES this year have kind of put robots and AI together, because they're AI powered robots, which Katie and I were talking about before we started recording. We were like, what does that actually mean? We're not sure. But it's just the physical manifestation of AI seems to be a talking point this year. So it's yes, we're moving beyond just talking about the theory of AI, and we're seeing it in the real world, both on digital back-end computer stuff that everyone uses in their daily workflows, and then I guess also in robots, which is
I think LG has a laundry folding robot that they're touting this week, which I was sort of sign me up for that. I don't know. Can I be on the beta?
Yeah, may I test that, please?
Yes. The other thing that I know at CES we'll be talking about AI a lot about is the Digital Hollywood track, which is all about how the entertainment industry is showing up. The track includes topics like how to produce cinematic works with AI. It showcases the tech behind all of the entertainment that you know and love, and the brands that obviously dip into entertainment worlds like AI, CGI, XR, and then a lot of conversation about AI copyright debates. So it's it's showing up in all of these different ways, all these different tracks, and it's a big presence at the conference for sure. It also comes after the entertainment industry has been reckoning with the effects of AI over this last year, which we'll dive into a little bit more later here. But I just want to kind of spend this episode talking about how marketers are actually going to be using AI this year. It's probably not going to be as flashy as a robot, but I don't know. What do you guys think, Kelsey? What's the way marketers are actually going to be digging in on AI this year?
Yeah, well, I think something that's always really helpful for setting the scene for the year is at the end of every year, we ask a bunch of marketers what are their priorities going to be in 2026, what are the biggest challenges they anticipate, and we just ask people and all the people that we talk to regularly for stories to understand what are they focused on. And AI, of course, was a huge topic. But I think the thing that we saw over and over again, the whole team participated in this, talking to people, but something we saw over and over again was that there's this focus on embracing AI tools as a discovery feature. For as consumers do that, brands are trying to figure out, how does my brand show up? How am I discoverable, legible to, and attractive to an AI search tool? I think I'd love to know kind of a little bit what we've heard from some of the people in this space, but I think that's a really it's a real tangible thing that brands are reckoning with. They reckoned with it last year, and I think this year is going to be a lot more kind of finalization of those strategies.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hearing is like it's the new era of SEO is agentic search and like how you get discovered. I know I was talking to a social marketer at Dentsu about this and like just how discoverability is a big point of focus for the Nutter Butter team. It was just like this idea that it's going to be less about velocity and like surface level engagements on social media and more about like in-depth citations. Like how does Nutter Butter show up in those like AI enabled summaries and recommendations that it provides.
I mean, I just think about like as a consumer, when I search anything on Google now, it's like you get the AI summary at the top, right? So it's like it used to be about like showing up in like the answer to your question or whatever the carousel of like stories that would show up at the top if it was like news related. But now it's like, how do you show up in that AI summary, which is kind of SEO, but kind of a whole new ball game. I talked to someone as part of this end of year story who is the CEO at Brandlight, which is a company that's like actually all about helping brands like figure out how to optimize themselves in places like ChatGPT so that they will show up when people are asking questions about where they should travel to or what brand is like the best for this skincare problem, whatever it is. So I think it's interesting that it's not only something that brands have to learn and reckon with, but it's also like literally a business opportunity for someone like Brandlight to come in and be like, we know how to do it, so we're going to teach other brands how to do it. And it's a never-ending cycle, I think, which stressful for some, exciting for others, maybe.
I think it's interesting because it's also not even that. It's those tools that consumers are embracing, but they're also kind of embracing social platforms as discoverability searches. So we've seen in the last couple of years, consumers will go onto TikTok and they'll search, moisturizer or something in the search bar. And so part of it, I think, is figuring out all these different new ways that consumers are searching for recommendations and figuring out how do I show up and how do I show up honestly, like in a way that feels really genuine to a consumer. Because if you're a consumer and you're on TikTok or you're on Instagram and you're searching for best moisturizer or something like that, I'm saying that because it's January and it's so dry.
My dry skin is suffering.
But if you're doing that, you're looking for a real person to recommend something. You're not looking for an ad. And I think that's kind of an interesting element here too. If you're asking ChatGPT, what sort of luggage should I buy for this trip, you're presumably asking that because you don't want to see an ad. You're not, you don't want to be, you want to see a recommendation from like the best part of the internet.
You're assuming it's vetted all the different sources and like accumulated data and came up with that based on that information.
Yeah.
I think that's like totally right, but it's crazy to think that in that analogy, ChatGPT is kind of a trusted like personality. Like when you're going to like a social platform, it's like, yeah, you're getting videos of actual real people speaking to camera. Like social marketers talk about like that authenticity all the time, but crazy to think that like a chatbot kind of plays that function too, and increasingly so, because that stresses me out to think a robot is going to be like a real person to some people. No thanks, sorry.
Well, especially when like it's kind of gamifying the results. If brands are trying to like make sure they're being recommended, they're like going to certain outlets. I know we talked about this like concept of algorithmic trust. Kelsey, I don't know if you want to expand on that, but just like how do you get to the top of like their recommendations, the AI's recommendations?
Right, and I think there's no perfect answer. There's not a perfect formula to kind of reach algorithmic trust because a lot of these tools are kind of black boxes. We don't really know how they work, that this has been the case for social platforms all the time. We just don't really know what's happening in the back end, but what works is working. Christina talked with JBL, they're a headphones and audio brand, and I think they said that this Black Friday, Cyber Monday cycle a couple months ago, they saw like a almost 2,500% increase in recommendations from LLMs. So it's like, this is happening. And the algorithmic trust is what kind of content are you building on maybe on your own site through perhaps affiliate, perhaps recommendations, gift guides, all of these sorts of things. But you have to read all those different signals and figure out what is actually what makes my brand a trusted recommendation, because of course the ChatGPT tool wants to satisfy its customers and and its users to make them feel good. So it's how do you build that? And there's really no answer. I think it's a lot of different tools. But it's funny. It's like, that's not a really sexy application of AI. It's just saying, okay, well, what does my SEO strategy look like? And maybe we have to make different content for our site. We put out different blog posts. We really lean into, different types of search functions because we know that people are going to be searching things differently.
Yeah. I know we kind of mentioned before this, we were talking about how AI will affect the ad sales side of thing, contextual targeting. Kelsey, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So at CES this year, NBCU is announcing some contextual, it's AI-powered contextual ad placements. And I think we're seeing this kind of crop up more and more on the kind of ad platform side of things. So they're saying, okay, well, we can use AI to put your ad exactly where it needs to be. We can read and understand the news content that is playing, and then we can run your ad where it makes sense and also not run it where it might not make sense. If you're an airline brand, you probably don't want your ad running on coverage of an airplane crash, right? So this is something that we've seen before. We've talked about it before, but we're seeing these tools continue to roll out or be emphasized. And again, it's sort of powered by AI, but we're seeing Reddit do it too. Something I think is kind of interesting though, and Jeremiah, I'd love to ask you about this, is NBC announcing this at CES is always like a fun way to start the year. Disney is going to be presenting. There's lots of media companies there, but AI is not just in the ad sales side or the contextual ad placement sort of space. I think Hollywood and those media companies are grappling with it in so many different facets. So tell us a little bit about what that conversation is kind of looking like in CES and just set the stage, because I think there's a lot of reckoning to be done about how AI and Hollywood mesh or don't mesh.
Yeah. I mean, well, we talk about this a lot. We talk about the entertainment industry a lot on the show and in our jobs in general, because it is a place that marketers of all types look to either for inspiration or partnership opportunities, or like people just that when you're trying to create culture, like entertainment is a huge part of that, right? So what this industry is doing with AI feels like it has a lot of implications for marketers across any industry. Something that happened setting the scene going into the CES, which I mentioned at the top of the show, was the OpenAI deal with Sora, which basically allowed OpenAI to license content. OpenAI's Sora deal with Disney. I was like, I left out a key player there. But yes, OpenAI will be able to license Disney's characters to be generated and produced with its Sora tool, which feels like a really big deal because it will have ripple effects across the entire industry. What is your guys' initial reaction to that deal?
I think it was a little surprising because Disney's like notoriously litigious about their IP and like being very protective of it. I feel like they're assuming this is just like where the wind is blowing, so why not get ahead of it? But I think it's interesting to note that it's just those specific characters. There's no like likenesses of its actors or their voices in animated shows being used, so it's really restricted to just like animated content.
Yeah, I think the specific ones are Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar creations. But yeah, even though it's like the animated stuff, it's like not even like the voices of those animated characters, right? And I think a piece of it too is that OpenAI is claiming that they will protect against like anything that's like not kid friendly or like a little bit like out of the ordinary. And it's like, okay, great, but I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of like how they're going to do that in the first place, because the nature of like user generated videos is that it can be insane.
I mean, people always find a workaround.
Yeah, there's always a loophole, and we're seeing like other AIs like Grok and stuff being used for ways that brands probably are not permissive of. So yeah, it's I'll be curious to see like how much they have to monitor this to make it successful and keep it brand safe.
Yeah, but I think the thing that's so interesting about the Disney Sora deal is like there's a lot of brands, and not just entertainment brands, but they have sort of this archive of maybe old advertisements or old brand characters, etc. I mean, think about McDonald's. Like I remember watching like the Ronald McDonald, they have a whole cast of characters. So is our brands going to kind of view this as an opportunity to say, okay, well, if we can't beat them, join them? Or do they say we need to be really protective of our IP because we don't want it showing up in these brand unsafe ways? It's sort of it's a delicate balance, I think. And I wonder if we're going to see more brands kind of take the position that Disney is, which is sort of getting in on it while the going's good, right? Strike a deal, also make an investment in this platform, or if they really turn the other way. And we know Christina is already hearing these conversations at CES, this question of how do we maybe mine our own IP using generative AI, but also then how do we do that internally only, or do we lean out and say, okay, user-generated content is a strength? How do we enable that, and are there ways to put guardrails? And I think there's no clear-cut answer, because I think there's pretty much a guarantee that we're going to see some sort of brand safety fiasco this year that's related to generative AI. We saw it last year. It's only going to continue.
So the other theme in like the entertainment industry and AI that I kind of want to like pick at a little bit here is kind of like this tension that also exists between like what consumers seem to want and what brands are pushing and putting out there and obviously wanting. Is that we've talked about this at length before in all of the AI topics that have led up to this episode, is that there is a growing consumer sentiment that like AI is not exactly what everyone wants, especially in the creative industry, right? It's like people really do value human creative work, but when brands are putting out AI produced or AI assisted things, there's this tension here. Why do you guys think that's happening, especially in these creative industries?
I think there's an element of peer pressure in all of this, or just kind of like competing with each other. Like, I'm not in the close circles of what's happening behind the scenes at Disney, but like I do feel like them even doing this deal was like, all right, everyone's going to be using AI, so we got to get ahead of this. We've got to be a part of this. And like that might not be what they want, but I do feel like everybody's like feeling this pressure from talking to other C-suite executives or talking to other competitor companies and seeing that they're doing something in the AI space. So it's like, what are we going to do in that space too? Even if an AI-generated ad isn't necessarily what consumers are looking for, it's like we have to do it. Like Coke even said that when they put out their holiday ad that got some backlash this year. It was the second time they did it. I know we talked about this, I think, in a recent episode. But yeah, I mean, like their executives came out and said, hey, this is the way of the future. You have to do this. But I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between what marketers or like executives are saying and what the public is saying.
Well, I'm glad you bring up the Coke example too, because I feel like even like when you think about like how AI is being used, like I think we talked about how like there was some statement from someone who worked on that ad that was like talking about how many hours they put into like prompting it correctly and like putting the work into like using the AI correctly. And it's like, okay, in theory, AI, especially in creative industries, is to like make maximum efficiency so that you have time to be creative in other elements. But when like it's still taking you so much time to actually do the AI correctly, it's like, are we just kind of canceling out the effects of AI here just in the service of like everyone's doing it, so we have to do it? And I think like that attitude of like everyone's doing it, so we should do it, is also like kind of like coming up as a reaction to like, because there is so much pushback from audiences that are like, okay, we don't want this. So why would you as a brand do something that like your audience doesn't seem to want? But it's like, okay, if you are a strong enough brand, you can kind of withstand that negative reaction until it becomes so normalized that like, of course you're doing it.
Well, and if your shareholders are looking for ways you're using AI, why not put out a public video showing like, hey, look, our holiday ad is made with AI. Look how publicly we're doing this. We're at the forefront. And I think right now, like our economy is being propped up by a lot of AI investments. So I feel like that's probably also a hidden factor going on.
It's like using AI as like the shorthand for showing off efficiency and cutting edge, you know? It's marketing in and of itself, just using AI as a word,
it's
right?
Like we're in the know, we're on the cutting edge, as you said. I feel like another good example of this kind of happening earlier in 2025, Tilly Norwood, the AI actress, caused quite a stir, and like most everyone in the creative industries was anti her creation and her use, even though like there was a rush of agencies wanting to represent her because they were like, this is the future. But I think it'd be remiss not to acknowledge that like she hasn't been used yet, but there is a use for something like this because there are producers or companies out there that like might not have the cash or the time to work with a real actress. And there is like a purpose that it serves, even if we are not the biggest fans of AI. We've said that many times on this show, or like general audiences like have negative reactions to it, or other people in the industry have negative reactions to it. There are still people that like are interested in it. So like there's enough interest that I think that's why like this industry continues to evolve and see where it takes us.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, Katie, I feel like you've talked with some people about kind of how they're thinking, particularly in the social space, of using AI in 2026. But I want to talk about like and ask you kind of what it seems like it's not suited for, and it, particularly this year, as we think about balancing this tension as a brand. Maybe you're not a huge brand, you don't want to deal with a huge backlash cycle or somebody saying, I'm not buying, this clothing brand or this auto brand because it's using AI and I really oppose that, or it just like left a weird taste in my mouth, et cetera. With that consumer sentiment kind of continuing, we see that where do you think we're headed?
I mean, I talked to an executive, Meg Harwowski, at Obviously for like an end of year roundup, and she was telling me that she thinks that like the Tilly Norwoods and the Lil Michaela, who's another AI generated influencer, are kind of toxic right now. So like she's advising clients in the influencer space to use it on the back end and to use AI in ways that are like generating contracts and like first drafts of documents and things like that, and not for actual influencer generated content. So I feel like last year we saw like, was it Mia Zelu, who was like the Wimbledon influencer who appeared, and everyone's like, wait, that's like not a real girl who's at Wimbledon. With something like that, I feel like there's this like feeling of being duped. You don't want to dupe your audience and be like, hey, this girl is actually at Wimbledon and look what she's wearing. When people find out like, oh, she's not wearing the actual clothes she's advertising, and she's not actually there, like you're not actually showing me what Wimbledon looks like or what those clothes look like on a real person. And I do feel like that kind of goes against this whole like authenticity thing that marketers love to tout.
Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of hard to tell as a consumer. There's not a very far distinction between that saying, oh, I thought she was wearing a real necklace or real clothes and she's not even real. So versus like seeing an AI generated ad for some terrible quality like sweater or something, and you think it's real knit, and then it's just like a print on a polyester shirt. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that that's too many steps away. And I think as a brand, particularly if you want to highlight quality and value and things like that, you don't want to be playing in that sandbox. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I definitely see that sentiment reflected too. And I think it's interesting because like, while some people might think that way, there's also so many brands that are investing in AI influencers and AI spokespeople and taking this very visible route still. So there's clearly this like kind of like very different sides of the argument that some brands are falling on and some are falling on the other side of. And it's like, it's almost like a race, like who's going to be right and like who's going to see it to the end of this year or future years and see what's going to pay off in the end. And people are taking big bets.
Yeah. I mean, and I think we're seeing creativity being rewarded more than ever. Like the Porsche ad that came out during the holidays where they like touted that it was like real animation, no AI was used, got really like great reception. Aerie last year had a post about how like they, in the same way that they don't retouch any of their models and their images, they're like, we're not going to use any AI. That was their most liked post of the year. I think audiences are rewarding this idea of like, if you put in the work, if you are being creative or if you're investing in creativity, we will reward you with engagement, as opposed to like, if you do something quickly with a shortcut, like why should we spend our time looking at it?
Yeah, it's kind of the idea that we've talked about before of like the proof of reality posts or creations, whatever it is. We see this with a lot of like behind the scenes type of videos, or just like letting you in on the process, and people seem to really gravitate to those types of like letting you peek behind the curtain and see the real work that's made. The one that I feel like we've talked about this before, that stood out last year was like Apple doing like their logo reveal and like all of like the real
behind the
glass
scenes
that they used, and it was like, it took us so long, and like look at all these people that like made it happen, and there was a lot of positive reception to it. So it definitely does something for the brands that do that. I'm curious to see if brands that like aren't super known for their craftsmanship or like really are like known for like letting like you in on the other side of the brand will go that route, because there's almost like an anti-AI sentiment that pops up. But again, the AI sentiment is still strong. So both sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and I think there's such a value, and something we heard over and over when we talked with marketers is this real focus this year on upskilling their teams, particularly around AI. And I think that's important in understanding how to use AI effectively, but also being educated enough, understanding the tools well enough to also know when to say, that's not for us, that we know what this tool is capable of, we're seeing how it's being used, and I can confidently say, this is something for us to sit out or only use in this very small way, because I think having a point of view on AI as a brand is only going to become more important this year. And I also think that, again, if you understand the tools and you understand what you're saying no to or saying yes to, like, that's really important. So it's kind of going from the experimentation and saying, okay, we can't just like slap something together and say, we're trying something out. Isn't this fun? Consumers expect more. And, I think particularly in the economic climate, like, there is some discernment happening in terms of consumer purchases. So I think there's like a lot of, still a lot to be talked about with AI, and we will continue talking about it. But, I think this is definitely the year of the unsexy implementation, I think.
Yeah, we roll our eyes at how many times we talk about AI on this show, but it's like, we gotta. It's so prevalent, and it will continue to be prevalent, and we'll just see where it takes us. But to kind of bring it back full circle to the robots we mentioned at the top of the episode, AI might not be in our physical world in that way, but clearly it is at CES. So just for funsies, if you guys had to have an AI-powered robot be part of your life in some way, what would it be?
I'm going to go with, in Clueless, when Cher has a little robot like situation where that like decides what outfit she's going to wear.
Oh, yes.
I want something that like catalogs my closet and tells me the perfect thing to wear based on like the weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dream.
Oh, gosh. If you could build that,
someone build that.
We'll buy it.
How has someone not built it? The inspiration has been there for years. Make it happen. Kelsey, do you have
you both know that I have a cat, and she can be a little finicky with food sometimes. So I'm like, I know you have automatic feeders, etc. I'm like, no, I need a little robot on wheels that follows her around with her little plate and is like, eat your food.
She's an AI companion for your cat.
Pretty much.
Oh my God. Oh man, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see how your cat reacts to that.
She might hate it, but we could try.
She eats.
Yeah.
Yeah, she eats her food, she doesn't need humans to feed her. Just give her a robot.
Yeah.
That's really all you need. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, want to send us a love letter, tell us what you want to see from the show as we go off into this year, send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. Catch you next week.